My name is Matt Desmere and welcome to Bournemouth University. Now, on the 26th of January 1926, John Logie Baird made the first public demonstration of a working television system. So, as a leading provider of media and TV training, it seems fitting that we should be celebrating that centenary here today. Joining me to talk us through the past, present and future of TV are some amazing guests. But before that, what exactly are we celebrating today? What exactly was invented 100 years ago today, and how is the ever-evolving landscape of TV changing in the age of social media and AI? To find out, our very own BU students have put together a report on these questions. Let's take a look.
Just finishing the last tune of my makeup. I know this might look a bit strange, but 100 years ago, this is how TV presenters actually had to make up. This is because the mechanical TV system invented in 1926 by John Logie Baird used 30 lines of resolution. In other words, the picture quality was very, very low. But what did John Logie Baird actually invent? I'm going to find out. But first, I think I better take this off. The TV which John Logie Baird demonstrated on the 26th of January 1926 was very different to the technology we use today. It was called mechanical TV. And to understand how it worked, I'm on my way to meet Bournemouth University electronic engineer Gary Toms, who has built a working model of a mechanical TV set. Hi, you must be Gary.
I am indeed.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
And you too.
May I come in?
Yes, certainly.
All right, thank you. Well, Gary, this all looks very amazing, very technical. Can you tell me a bit about how it works?
Certainly. The original was done with a large spinning disc. It's known as a Nifkos disc. It's got a series of holes in it. We've got the holes around the periphery, which is used to help us track the speed and the position of the disc. And there's a set of smaller holes which are made into a spiral which actually go past the light source. So when the disc rotates once, you end up with 30 lines across the light. So you end up with an image that's 30 millimeters by 30 millimeters.
Can you fire it up, show how it works?
Yeah, certainly.
The Times newspaper described the image produced by Baird's TV as faint and blurred. So I'm curious to see what Gary's machine can do. And here are the images. First some numbers, and then a woman's face. Very similar to the quality achieved by Baird 100 years ago. And here's Baird's original TV camera from 1926. And here's one of his TV sets with its distinctive spinning disc. Over the next few years, Baird dramatically improved the image quality, and in 1936 the BBC started regular TV broadcasts. However, sadly for Baird, his mechanical system was soon replaced by more advanced electronic TV technology. But Baird's achievement was Over the next few years, Baird dramatically improved the image quality, and in 1936 the BBC started regular TV broadcasts. However, sadly for Baird, his mechanical system was soon replaced by more advanced electronic TV technology. But Baird's achievement was enormous. Working on his own with a tiny budget, and using bits of cardboard, metal, batteries and bicycle lamps, he had invented television. His grandson says it was the work of a genius.
Anyone who sees a target that nobody else sees and then hits it, I think is a good definition of genius in his case. Somebody else could have done it. He just had all the right knowledge and the creativity and the drive to get it all working. So he would look around for parts to use. There was no television parts store, so he had to fabricate almost everything. And then borrow from radio, which was, even then, broadcast radio had only started out a few years earlier. So the radio components were also very expensive. And he'd been reading H.G. Wells. And this gave you ideas that the lone inventor, the person working in a shed behind their house could invent something with fairly basic materials.
We want nothing the mule.
During the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, millions of people watched TV regularly. Families would often sit down together to watch events like the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in 1953, or to watch Roger Bannister run the first 4-minute mile in 1954. TV drama and comedy attracted huge audiences, so too did spectacular shows like the Eurovision Song Contest. According to Lewis Pollard from the National Science and Media Museum, TV became a sort of social glue holding the country together.
Television became such a popular way of seeing things that it was this social glue. So, for example, the Eurovision Song Contest that started in the 1950s and has been running for 70 years since, that is a program that's made for television. And the thing that really interests me about the Song Contest is I know people who've gone to see it live, and they say it's not the same experience. It's like going to a music concert, but the program is made with television in mind. You know, the cameras get the best angles, and it's mediated for television. And that's why something like that still is quite popular for a lot of people. You know, they gather around each year to watch something like the Eurovision Song Contest.
But what about the future of TV? How have viewing habits changed? To find out, I'm going to talk to some university students about their viewing habits and the type of video content they consume. Figuring it out, guys. Today, young people rarely watch broadcast TV. Instead, they tend to watch video content on demand from streaming services, and they consume content in ways that are very different to how earlier generations watched TV.
I watch mostly YouTube on my laptop. I don't watch a lot of programs, TV on a big screen. It's mostly in my room by myself, really.
I'm more of my own choice now. Before it was like what the family watches together and everything, but now I can, go and get my laptop and, watch what I like on there.
But I'd say the big one I use is Netflix, because it has a bulk of things that I want to watch.
TV has come a long way in 100 years. Today, there's an almost infinite choice of content, which means we can watch whatever we like, wherever and whenever we want to.
So what do you think John Logie Baird would think about how his invention turned out? In my opinion, I think he'd be pretty happy about it. But honestly, what I would love to know is what he would think about the next 100 years of television.
Absolutely fascinating. So, who'd have thought 100 years ago we had two spinning metal discs doing something, and now here we are streaming live on YouTube in front of a studio audience. How far we've come. So what we really want to do now is think a little bit more about the future and where the medium might be going, the kinds of things that are going to impact what we see, what we hear, how we engage with this medium. So we've got three fantastic speakers. The first speaker is Laura Ellis. So Laura is the head of technology forecasting for the BBC. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And what a beautiful film that was. And I think John Logie Baird would be very proud to see what's happened in those incredible 100 years in which BBC Research and Development, where I come from, has played its part. So it's a wonderful time to be celebrating this anniversary. And I did a couple of meetings before I arrived today, and everybody in the BBC started the meeting by saying, "Happy 100 years television," because we care a lot about it, and it's a very special thing for us as well. So it's a real privilege and an honour to be here. I love what you've got going on here. I haven't been here before. These facilities are beautiful, and I've met some amazing people already. So thank you for having me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about television. So we've come a long way, as I think we've established. So those beautiful pictures of the old television, and I thought it was incredible that you'd recreated that early technical work. Televisions used to look a bit like that. You'd have to sort of hang around them and squint, carefully at them. And then the picture that you see on the right with our Freely logo, which is one of the inventions that R&D's been heavily involved with, is what we see today. So much more screen real estate, so much sharper, obviously, colour, and all of the things that we've become used to. But it's just worth taking a moment to think how far we've come. Although the experience so often is really the same, we're all getting round a TV to see what's on it and to join in that experience. We have really been blessed with some incredible technological advances. I must quickly talk about R&D because we were instrumental in the development of colour TV in the 50s. Of course, we saw that TV started in the 30s. There was then a little pause for the war, and then it came back with a big vengeance afterwards. And then we saw things like video recorders and things like on demand, which have completely changed the way that we look at TV. I was talking to Matt before we did this session, and we used to do things like run home to catch Countdown because, if you didn't catch it, you missed it. It wasn't a question of looking on an iPlayer or another video player. You had to be there. We had 3 channels at one point. And when I look now at the huge array of things we have available, it feels so different, and yet also in so many ways the experience is the same. I'm just going to set a bit of context. Don't worry about this slide. It's a pre-prepared one that we use with R&D all the time. I'm just going to very quickly run through and say that we must look at TV in a wider context. So it is exactly what we sit in front of or sit back and have our tea in front of. But it also is changing very dramatically from the point of view of how we distribute it. So we're moving away from broadcast, what the BBC calls sticks on hills, transmitters, to an internet-only world. That has an enormous amount of consequences. We risk cutting off some people who perhaps don't want to engage with the internet, and there are still those people. We also risk being very much more disintermediated. So that little yellow blob in the middle is all about how the BBC and other broadcasters are having, if you like, the power taken away from them. We're not as prominent anymore. We're not on the electronic programme guide in the same way. We have to fight for our position. We're seeing AI start to enhance TV. We're seeing things like Gemini, Google's Gemini, start to be embedded in TV so that you're having an AI-driven experience. We saw some of that in recent weeks at a conference that I go to called CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And then things like interactive experiences. So people are expecting their TV to be something that they can engage with in a way that perhaps they didn't used to. So it's not just about sitting back and consuming, it's about taking part. And we're developing some really exciting things in the BBC about how you might do that using second screen technology, but also a whole host of other things. I won't do immersive because we've all tried 3D glasses and nobody's ever really gone to love them, but there are all sorts of things emerging as we might imagine in that space over time. So TV's at the centre of our lives, and I mentioned CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and this was the cue to get into the LG, which is one of the major manufacturers, one of their booths. And it's an enormous space, and everybody wanted to see the latest things that they'd developed and invented. They were looking at the picture quality, they were looking at how the TV linked up with other things like your cooker and your fridge, and I can never quite work out why you'd want to do that, but there we go, people do. So here were people from across the globe flying in, queuing up, just really demonstrating the fact that TV is still such an important part of our technological landscape, as well as our social one. Can anybody spot the TV in that shot? I expect you probably can, but it does look very much like any other bit of art on the wall. It's the picture with the sort of the leaves just above the dresser. And this is one of the things that I think is a really interesting trend. So what we're starting to see is TV becoming very much something that the manufacturers want to push as being right at the heart of the home and having an enormous amount of capacity to be always on. Now, what do you think always on might mean? Well, it might mean that it's not a great thing for sustainability because always on means that you're going to be consuming more power, but it also means that it's watching you and it's bringing data in. So your TV is not a screen anymore, it is a computer, and it's sucking in data about you. There's something called millimeter wave, which it's using to see who's in the room. Is it you? Is it somebody else? What are you doing? And even potentially, are you sad? Are you happy? What time of day is it? Are you likely to want this content or this content? And as we get AI-driven personalization, that's going to become even more of a thing. We in the BBC have pushed back on this being always on and said we don't like the sustainability issue. So they've now got something, not because of us, but general feedback, I suspect, where if you go into a room, it will turn on when it detects human presence and then switch off. But even so, that's quite an interesting development. Having the TV as something which shows your daily calendar, shows your family, events coming up, maybe offers you a workout, maybe offers you some pet care advice, maybe gives you a recipe for your dinner. the manufacturers who are doing this, and there were 3 that we saw at the show in Las Vegas who are particularly keen on doing this, and LG, Samsung, and actually it's 4 actually, TCL and Hisense, both Chinese companies. I could talk for hours about how the Chinese industry has developed so strongly over the last few years, but I promise you I won't at this point. So really fantastically interesting how TV is becoming very much the centre of our lives, but also it is providing a window into our world for the people who are running it. And they are acquiring an enormous amount of data about our habits and what we like to watch, and they will be increasingly steering that through the use of artificial intelligence. Right, just going to do a quick time check, make sure I'm not overrunning. So where do we go next? Well, the new ways to differentiate are going to be an issue. So for the manufacturers, picture quality is pretty much as good as it's going to get. We're not going to see any more developments in that because our eyes won't be able to perceive them. It is really, really good. It can't get much better. Somebody said to me at CES, your eyes are like the eyes of Jesus, but television's moved on a lot. And I thought that was a very interesting framing. Couldn't quite work out why he was saying that, but there we go. This was Las Vegas. Novelties have tended not to stick. So I don't know if you saw a few years ago, there were screens that rotated. They just didn't stick. TV seems to be a rectangle on the wall that we feel quite comfortable with, and that we feel quite comfortable with no matter what the content is. So I know you're going to talk a little bit about YouTube in a minute, and you're going to hear a lot about that. The BBC's just done a deal with YouTube, and we are very, very happy that we're going to be able to reach a new audience with that. YouTube is coming into the living room and being on that TV in the centre of the home. We need to think about the content economy and people going to people giving their own content to organisations like the BBC so that we can share it. So it's not just going to be about broadcast and us pushing out content. It's going to be much more about a shared experience. We do this with radio already with, I don't know if you've come across something called BBC Introducing. It's a way for people who are making music to share it with the BBC, and we then share it more widely and it gives them an audience. I see a lot of that stuff coming into television. I see us really starting to think about being much more a part of the creator economy. And those of you who spend time, as I do, on TikTok and Instagram will see that the kind of quality of the creators that we see these days is amazing. And it's it's a travesty in a way that that there isn't a more integrated way for public service broadcasters like ourselves to integrate them into their sort of their offering and their content. I think that's something that we're really going to see start to develop in the next little while. Let's talk a little bit about AI as an interface, because this is going to be absolutely massive. So the first appearance of Gemini on TVs was last year in the CES show in Las Vegas. It was previewed, and it made us think. We are seeing it start to roll out in the US. We don't know when it's coming to the UK, but it's never going to be very long. There is a bit of a lag now between the US and the UK that didn't used to occur in terms of when things are released. This is mostly because of the big tech companies and their relationships with our regulators. So we're quite fierce in the UK and the EU, and we say no to things. So quite often the penalty for that is that we don't get stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how we regulate the whole Gemini experience. And it's not just Gemini, but Gemini have got a sort of head start on this by having relationships with a couple of the big TV manufacturers. So imagine a world where your TV does give you something when you walk into a room that it thinks you might want. Imagine if that news experience is always mediated by YouTube, because at the moment, using Gemini, it will be. How do you feel about that? Are we comfortable with that? Are we comfortable with the fact that essentially that moment that perhaps we used to have of flicking through something and looking for something to watch could quite easily be taken away? Do we feel comfortable with that? Do we want that? And I think the other thing which I think is so interesting is the fact that one of the people I spoke to at an AI startup made this comment, and I want you to think about it. He said to me, I think the future of television will be humans getting involved in some live stuff, but everything else will be AI-driven. Everything else will be AI-driven. And I said, I really hope it won't. And what he meant, and maybe I'm not quite a boomer, but I'm 3 years off, so maybe I'm wrong, and I'd love to sort of chat to you after about this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just felt there was still room for humans in TV production and creation. And we had a really interesting conversation about it, which made me think quite a lot. So any soap opera fans in the room? Anybody watch any soap opera or online? If you imagine your favourite soap opera, your favourite series, whatever it is, and you imagine that the AI has created an episode of that, How do you feel about it? Do you feel the same way about that episode of that drama, that soap opera, whatever it is? Or do you feel slightly different if you know that it's been written and created by an AI? I thought about this a lot, and my answer is that I feel I would feel differently about it, because when I watch EastEnders, because I'm a real EastEnders fan, because you have to be in the BBC, but I am anyway, when I watch it, I like to think that whatever I'm watching has somehow come from a place of human experience, which sounds very pretentious, but what I mean is somebody's written that knowing that this particular thing is an issue. They might have experienced it, they might have researched it, they might have talked to other humans about it, they might have brought their own experience of joy or pain into the acting of that or the writing of that. And I think that's quite an important part of my enjoyment. Because TV is all about a shared experience, and whilst live stuff automatically gives you that, you know, if you're watching a coronation or a royal wedding or a sports match, people are coming together and they're sharing in something important, something big. On-demand, recorded, whatever you want to call it, TV, can also be a shared human experience. And I think we really do lose that at our peril. It would be a terrible shame, in my view, if we lost the humanity that's at the centre of our TV production. And I'm sure that, you know, working where you do and doing what you do, you will have thoughts about this, because we must not be replaced by AI. I do a lot of talking about AI. I spend a lot of time in that world. I can see the benefits, but I can also see some real dangers. So I think that's really where it comes to. It's about having 100 years of human ingenuity, which we've built on to create shared moments. I think that's the beauty of television. And I'm very, very hopeful that as we go on to the next 100 years, whatever they look like and however different they're going to be, and you're going to hear from some incredible speakers now who will delve into that a bit more deeply, I really hope that we keep humans at the centre of it. And that would be my message. Whatever you do, and as you rise in the industry and as you make your own way, let's make sure that there's still space to have humans observing things and conveying them to other humans through the magic of television. That's me done, and I'm going to hand you back to Matt.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. God, that was fascinating. So, I don't know how I feel about AI choosing what I'm going to watch. I don't know how I feel about AI making what I'm going to watch. I know how I feel about a TV always being on in my lounge and watching me, and I don't think anybody wants that. But what I thought was really interesting was the point that Laura ended on, was this idea about it being humans, and about the role that we and the creators economy plays in it. And it was a wonderful segue into our next guest. So the next speaker we've got is Luke Hyams. He is the co-founder of the independent production company Pangier. Luke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Laura. Get ready for me to cover a lot of the same points in a far less eloquent way. Getting into it. It's all right. All right. It's all right. May we have the slides on one of these, please? Thank you. Wonderful. Will this click? Great. So next 100 years, where are we going? What are we into now? It is going to be the age of you personally. Young people in this room and outside of it, making programs, picking up cameras, they're the ones that will define the next 100 years. I learned many years ago that young people in this age know a lot more about the world around them than older people. So really is, what I'm going to put forward are really just some sort of guesses and observations from my experience, but I will look to you guys for the future of what's to come next. Especially as so much of the traditional entertainment business seems to be burying its head in the sand about what we're experiencing right now. And what we're experiencing right now is a transformation. You know, television is expanding into many, many, many different things. And you know what? That's fine, because with that brings an incredible age of opportunity, which I'm sure that all of you are going to be able to capitalize on. Now, who am I to be able to come here and talk to you about this? Well, for starters, I am the first person in post-war Britain, or rather the only person in post-war Britain to have been excluded from school for shooting a teacher with a pea shooter. Yes. I have an incredible amount of respect for everybody who's made it to university. This is the first time I've ever even been in a university. The only qualification I ever got was an award for having the sharpest tongue on a school journey in 1992, because I kept telling the teachers how unimpressed I was with everything that we were doing on our school trip. So those are my qualifications. After I got expelled from school, I had the most amazing luck you could ever imagine. I was sat at home one day on a Saturday night, Challenge Annika, which was an old TV show you should look up, came on, and a studio was being built right near my house where young people could go and play with cameras and make what we now call content. So I went there after I got expelled from school, and I was able to begin my career. Now, early on in this, we had a visitor from a very, very notable and sadly missed TV executive. And he came along and we had a conversation. I was 15 years old, and I said to him, one day we here at this youth club, YCTV, would love to have a program that we make on the BBC. And he laughed and he said, that is impossible, that will never happen. This is a youth club. We only have programs on our airwaves from proper production companies and the internal BBC. And there, in that very moment, I realized what the goal was. I had all of a sudden something to shoot for, and that something was to prove him wrong and get a show onto BBC. So if we have a minute after the talk, if you want to come and tell me your hopes and dreams, I'm very happy to shoot them down and be that bad guy for you guys. R.I.P. Alan, we laughed about this later on, but we did get together, we did manage to do it, and after 5 years and 5 pilots, we made a show called Pass the Mic, which is full of cancelled people and people that were on the Epstein Island and whatever else, but it was a fantastic experience. From that, I managed to parlay into having a number of really amazing failing upward experiences in TV. Among that was being the head of original content at YouTube in Europe when that was a thing. And also, I was the director of the definitive film about the creator revolution, The Sidemen Story, and more on that in a sec. When we talk about predictions, you have to be really, really careful with predictions. I actually, in an article in The Guardian in 2006, I made some predictions myself. Here we go. Okay, yes, there it was. I rightly predicted that we would move from television into watching content on our mobiles. Thank heavens I didn't say anything about flying cars. I talked about waiting for a bus. That was a very proud moment to be in The Guardian as a young program maker. I've actually had prouder moments. I had another article where I had an interview in a mainstream newspaper. I made the worst horror film ever made in 2014. But guess what? The Daily Sport loved it. They ran an article saying it was bloody great, and they put me right next to an article that rated all of the actress Ava Green's topless scenes. So anyway, there we go. I digress. Like Laura was saying before, where are we going in terms of AI? Well, we could be going somewhere where it's individualized, algorithmically driven entertainment prompted by the machine's ever-growing knowledge of your tastes, passions, interests, and emotional touch points. Now, what could this mean? Well, this could mean I love Game of Thrones and I love Batman. I also love horses. I also deeply miss my grandmother, right? Maybe the AI would loop those all in together for a viewing experience. Now, for some reason, that leaves me a little bit cold. The future prediction I'm really excited about is also quite scary, but quite relevant, which is that we are heading towards a world where we're going to have 50% creators and 50% audience. Now, how do we prepare ourselves for this world? Well, a number of different ways we'll get into, but the first is to understand that if we're going to be creators, we have to create about something that we're passionate about. That's the biggest lesson that I've learned from so many of these young people who've made careers out of being creators. And the other thing is you really must try and live an interesting life if you want to succeed creatively, right? I was in a real rut about 11 years ago, and I had an amazing opportunity to move to China. And I went there, and it revitalized my life just by everything being in a different language. KFC being a place that sold beef and not chicken, toilets being something new and exciting, and most importantly, by working with a team who had completely different life experiences than me. So again, we're sidetracking, but if you get a chance to travel, work abroad, experience more of the world, that could be really, really exciting. So many of the YouTubers I see my kids watching are talking about the same other YouTubers or computer games or football players, and I think we need to broaden out a little bit more. Now, when Matt wrote to me, this is what he said we were going to do. So back on course, we're going to talk about some of the projects that I've done, and I think most relevant would be the film that I made in 2024, which was called The Sidemen Story. And we're going to show a clip.
In my bedroom with a dream thinking, oh, it'd be cool to just make a few videos online and see where it gets me. Hey guys!
I was a broadcast uni student, living off of subway points.
It changed the course of the next 10 years of all of our lives.
Goes to show how powerful a group can be.
What do you think motivates us to keep going?
Legacy.
These people that you idolise are normal people and they have real feelings.
So this was a film about the world's greatest collection of YouTubers called The Sidemen. It's available on Netflix. Please go and check it out because it also tells a sort of the story of the creator revolution and its effects on legacy media. The main points that we learned from this film, just to condense it if you don't have time to go to Netflix, is that the Sidemen got where they are to be basically the #2 YouTubers in the world by hard work and consistency. They also got on the platform very early and were able to bed in and really put the work in the early days to establish a foundation. They, as 7 people, have this amazing democratic decision-making process which allows them to vote on every single decision and allows for them to exist in a unit in a way that I've seen many other groups of people, the Beatles, not be able to work in quite the same number because they didn't have odd numbers. And finally, the biggest learning from the Sidemen is that actually what we found while making the film is that the main thing that they give their audiences is a parasocial connection. So for 1 hour every Sunday night, their core audience of young people who they give them the opportunity to feel like they are one of the Sidemen, the sort of 8th member of the crew for that hour, and they feel invested in it and they carry that over. And so while Matt advised me to talk about some of the great learnings from this film, I actually feel, when I thought about it, what I'd love to do is share some of the learnings from a film that I started in that same year, but which actually fell apart and I wasn't able to continue producing.
Happiness for me is like being able to give back and improve other people's lives. And I was doing that for years with SB. I'd put artists on and then they'd blow up. And then I'd be like, yes, I've helped a career, do you know what I'm saying? And then like after that, it became more about the community of doing the stuff, the youth stuff. And that, like for me, is fulfillment. You've got to try and do as much as you can in the time that you're given.
The influence YouTubers have over people is overwhelming, and their power to change views and create a movement is phenomenal. And I've seen how they're becoming more political. That's why I think our future Prime Minister could be discovered on YouTube. Thank you for your time.
So this was a film about a really incredible guy called Jamal Edwards who started the SBTV YouTube platform, who we tragically lost in 2022. And I think the lessons from the story of Jamal are that simple formats can scale. He went out there while loads of other people were out filming rap freestyles, and he did them in a format, the F64 format, that allowed them to be categorized and compared by the audiences and recognized immediately. Another lesson from him is that consistency beat other channels that were just doing big moments at the time. He was going out there filming and uploading constantly, F64s, A64s, keeping going, keeping going, keeping going. The big one for him is about holding the door open for others. We live in a world where it is so important that you embrace other creative people and don't block them, but help to give them a platform. And that's what Jamal did his entire life for everybody from Ed Sheeran to Jessie J to Dave. The list could go on all day if I was to continue it. And finally, the biggest lesson we're going to learn from him is that huge success at a young age or at any age requires a lot of support. It requires both personally and professionally for you to be in a place where you can be open about the stresses that you're feeling and what you're going through. So, yes, and the world that we live in, you know, it's really important that we remember that the world that we're living is one where most of the platforms that we are consuming content on are motivated by a business ideology that wants them to double their growth every year by 10 times in terms of their profit, in terms of the amount of watch time and engagement.
Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead.
Yeah, so I probably should have prefaced that with exchange the word Terminator for big tech and exchange the word killed for, or dead even, for hooked. Yes, this is the world we live in. All of the apps that we use are designed to keep us on there as much as possible. You know, they measure it in ways that include watch time, retention, and engagement. And we all have to be very aware of that when we're going and we're making content for these apps, that these are the rules that sort of drive them, and that we have to be aware about our own mental health as we go in to try and work with these platforms, which is something that, you know, I think is important for everybody who's setting out on a career in entertainment should be very aware of right now. Is it tyrannical social media? Well, this is a nice picture that the AI slot put out. No. I'll tell you why it's not. It's not because I worked at YouTube for 4.5 years. 2 weeks into my time at YouTube, I was like, whoa, this place really reminds me of somewhere. And then it hit me. It reminded me of BBC White City in 1998 when I worked in the community programming unit. There was an air of complacency in the air. There was an air of thinking that we were the platform and that nothing else would ever change. You know, we were going to run forever. And when I left YouTube, it was very different because TikTok were hot on their heels. And so the point I'm trying to make is that there will not just be one platform forever. This television, or whatever we call it, will continue to evolve in many, many different directions. And so I think us adopting new platforms as they come is a really important thing to remember to do. In terms of opportunity, I'd say the other thing to be aware of is diversification. I've sat down with many different creators right now who are building incredible businesses, not just on YouTube, but on a number of different apps, from Shopify to Substack to Patreon. You know, there's lots of different ways for you to monetize your audience on the content that you're passionate about. And so for final words, I'd like to throw back to Jamal.
There's a quote that I've put on my Twitter. There are those who think of the way things are and ask why, but I say dream of things that never were and ask why not.
Thank you, Bournemouth.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Wow. Another fascinating talk. So what was really interesting there, that we'd gone from this idea of the potential, none of this is written in stone, but that potential that AI is going to define what it is we're going to watch, to this idea that actually it's the creator economy, and actually we're going to create the content that we see, and that's how we're going to consume it moving forward. Fascinating subject. What was particularly interesting, and I spoke to Luke about this earlier today, was that idea of YouTube. So I bit the bullet about 18 months ago, and I paid to have the ads taken off YouTube. And now I don't watch anything but YouTube, and I'm subjected to the sidemen. And I didn't understand the sidemen. I really didn't understand this group of 7 grown men running around a house playing hide and seek, or sitting in a dark room playing Among Us, the game, and my kids would watch it for hours and hours. But actually then I watched Luke's documentary, and it's the impact that they've had on society, the cultural shift that those guys have created or that they've opened up and enabled for other people, that for me was the real power of what TV can and does do. And a lovely segue into our next speaker, who is Zoe Harkness. Now, Zoe is the head of partnerships for Thinkbox, who are the associated body for the commercial TV industry. So, without further ado, Zoe, floor is yours. You might need to bear with me while I sort out.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt. Just waiting for, there we go. Brilliant. So I thought it'd be helpful to give you a bit of an overview of TV today, building on what the previous speakers. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the viewing landscape as it exists in the UK today. I'm going to talk a bit about being part of culture and how you can make that happen, and then finally just touch on the sort of cultural impact of some TV shows. So I'm going to start with the viewing landscape. I think it's important to look at some data to see what the country as a whole is watching. And it's important not to just use yourself as a proxy. Like, let's say you watch lots of Netflix, you might think everyone else in the country does too. So let's look at the numbers. This is a nationally representative sample of people across the country and their viewing over the last 10 years. So you can see that ignore the sort of 2020-21 years, because that was COVID and we were all stuck at home watching lots of video. So they were unusual years, so we can just sort of ignore them. But you can see it's actually a pretty stable picture. And if we draw in that dotted line, that's total video viewing. So we're actually watching more video than we were 10 years ago. And this is predominantly driven by the growth of YouTube and the introduction of TikTok. If I just add in that other dotted line, that's the line for TV. So back in 2015, we watched 3 hours and 45 minutes of TV every day. And in 2024, we watched 3 hours and 37 minutes of TV every day. So a drop of only 8 minutes across the 10 years. So a pretty stable picture. We haven't got 2025 data yet because the numbers don't come into sort of February. So that's why it's showing 2024. But what we are seeing within that picture of stability is a shift of viewing from live, linear, scheduled TV to on-demand. So you can see linear TV is down, commercial, BVOD, that stands for Broadcaster Video On Demand, so that's ITVX, Channel 4 streaming and so on. That's growing quite a lot. SVOD, that's subscription video on demand, so Netflix, Disney Plus and so on, that's also growing. TikTok seems to be stable. It went down a little bit first half of this year, so TikTok may have reached its sort of natural plateau, and YouTube also pretty stable at +3%. What we are seeing is that more people are watching on demand. Obviously, if you want to watch your favourite programme, you're going to want to watch it at a time that suits you. So we're seeing an increase in on-demand across all age groups. But you can see particularly for sort of younger people, the 25 to 34-year-old age group watch about a third of their viewing. This is total commercial viewing. They watch about a third on demand and then 2/3 live. People are often surprised actually about how much live TV we still watch, so about 2/3 for that group. So this is viewing on a TV set. So I work in advertising and sort of helping advertisers get the best out of TV. And we know that the TV set is by far the best screen for advertising, the big screen, that shared viewing environment. And 93% of everything we watch on a TV set is to high quality content like on TV. So about 75% to the broadcasters and 18% to the streamers like Netflix and so on. And only 7% of what we watch on a TV set is to video sharing services, most of which is YouTube. So that is good news for advertisers because that's the environment that you want your ads to be seen. So talking about advertising, so we watch about 18 minutes of ads every day, and 85% of that is to TV. You can see about 11% is to YouTube, about 2.6% to TikTok, and all other online video combined is less than 1%. So really tiny. It's really about YouTube and TikTok are the major online video places to see advertising. But 85% of every ad that we see is on TV. And finally, on this section, I just wanted to touch about effectiveness, because TV is by far the most effective medium for advertising. This is a study of 141 brands, 1.8 billion pounds worth of media spend, and it's advertisers who've done econometric analysis to see what pays back, what medium pays back. And you can see that linear TV delivers almost half, 47% of all profit delivered by TV across all those brands. So by far the most effective. So just a sort of overview of the landscape. Viewing is pretty stable. We're watching more video, and TV is roughly the same. But we are seeing a shift from live to on-demand. 85% of every ad that we watch is on, of every video ad that we watch is on TV. And TV is the most effective media channel. But you might say, well, Zoe, I don't know if I care about effectiveness. I just want to be part of culture. How can I be part of culture? Well, I suppose first we should explain what do we mean by culture. Well, we mean it's something that has a shared reference, something that we all kind of know what we're talking about. It's repeated exposure, and it's something that lives in our collective memory. That makes it a kind of cultural thing. But it's important to distinguish kind of cultural signal from noise. So what we want is a lasting cultural impact. We want something that is stable, that's deep and enduring, that lasts, not just a sort of flash in the pan that has a short-term attention spike but is a bit shallow. It's easily displaced by the next thing that comes along. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So this is Group 7. I don't know if ever you come across this, but there was a singer called Sophia James, and she put out 7 videos. She's a singer, 7 videos, music videos on TikTok, all slightly different, and she wanted to see which one had, would be the most popular. Videos 1 to 6, barely anything at all, but number 7 video went mad. Everyone started watching it. There was lots of people watching it. And so it became this sort of in-joke, are you in Group 7? And it became a kind of in-joke. There was sort of a shared feeling about this, and oh yeah, I'm in Group 7. It became this thing, like, are you in Group 7? It's kind of a bit meaningless, but it became a thing. And Google search gives us an indication of what people are interested in. And for a little while, people, well, what is this Group 7 that people are talking about? I want to know. So you can see a couple of big spikes there, people searching for Group 7, wanting to know about it. But you can see with the spikes are quite short, not very wide, and also went away quite quickly. So I'd call that as a sort of short attention spike, not something particularly enduring. But let's have a look at a few other examples. So you can see that dotted blue line, that's Group 7. But what was much more stickier was the Nicki Minaj challenge. This was people posting videos of themselves in high heels, balancing on things. And you can see across the year, lots more spikes and a bit longer, so much stickier than Group 7, so starting to become a bit of a bigger deal. Let's look at something else. So earlier in the year, lots of people were searching for Oasis tickets, that big blue bulge in the middle, so it was a nice big spike. It was as high as the highest ever spike for Nicki Minaj, but you see much longer, so the interest stayed for longer, so sort of stickier than that. What else? So this was a big deal. Remember when those workmen dressed up, or thieves rather, dressed up as workmen and went to the Louvre and stole the French crown jewels. So when that happened, so a big kind of event in the news happened, you see that massive spike, that green spike, so much, much bigger than Oasis tickets or anything else. So something happens big in the news, that generates a lot of search and shows what we're interested in. But again, it was quite quickly, and we moved on to something else. But this is a TV program. This is Married at First Sight. Now, Married at First Sight has been around for 10 years, but even so, when it comes on air, you can see big spikes in search, and not just short spikes that last for a long time. So 2 big spikes across the year that lasted for a good while. So really nice and sticky. And obviously, it's coming. So you wouldn't have thought necessarily that Married at First Sight, who's been around for 10 years, would create such interest, but that's the power of a TV program. The really big trend of the summer was Labubus. It was massive. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was desperate to get their hands on one. At the height of the Labubu craze, one doll sold for $150,000, which is just mad. And you can see it was bigger than anything else, absolutely huge across this summer. But again, it tailed away quite quickly. Once the craze had gone, we all moved on to something else. So the final one I want to share with in this is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, another TV program on ITV. That program's been around for 20 years, I think more than 20 years, but you can see much bigger spike than the Boo Boo and for longer. And that's the thing about TV programs, is that you know they're coming, and so you can plan for it. If you're an advertiser or a brand, you want to get involved in something that people are interested in, you can see, you know a program's coming, you can get involved. And that's sort of the power of a TV program, that you can, for an advertiser, you can get involved with it and be part of something that people are really interested in. So if your goal is culture, then longevity matters as much as scale. We want things that are going to stick around. We want things that are predictable, so we can plan it alongside our other marketing. Obviously, we've got that repeat exposure that TV gives us, the ongoing relevance. It's a compounded memory. We all watch it and share about it, and there's a very slow decay. We lose interest much more slowly than something that can be sometimes sort of a short spike, gives us a bit of a fragile cut through, and it decays very quickly, and we lose interest and we move on to the next thing. The final thing I just wanted to share with you is just the power of TV programs themselves to create change, to change behaviour, and to have a really massive impact on real life. And I've just got 3 examples to share with you. The first one is this. It was about a year or so ago. It was Mr. Bates versus the Post Office on ITV. So the Post Office scandal and all the post masters and mistresses who've been defrauded out of millions of pounds, put into jail and so on, that had been around for a while, but there just wasn't that much interest in the public about it. ITV made a drama about it, and suddenly there was a lot of interest, there was a lot of pressure, and it got the government to change their mind, to introduce regulation that got the people out of prison and got them the recompense that they deserved. So it had a massive impact on real life and the people involved. My second example is the Paralympics. So Channel 4's coverage of the Paralympics has really changed people's perception about people living with disability, and has enabled us to sort of celebrate the disability community in a way that we weren't able to really do before. So has really the power to change perceptions. And my final example is Adolescence, which was on Netflix last year. So it's really enabled us to change the way we think about and talk about youth issues, and talking to young people about some of the sort of social media bullying and stuff that goes on. So that also had a massive impact on real life and in our days. And that's, I guess the point I want to leave you with is that the TV, because it's the shared experience that we watch with other people, it's the power of the sort of emotional intent behind it that is and it makes it memorable, sort of makes us feel something, and it makes us remember it. So just to summarise what I've talked about, overall video viewing is pretty stable. We're watching a bit more video than we used to, and TV is about the same. But TV programs offer the ability to tap into culture, because we know they're coming, we know people are going to be really interested in them, and so we can plan to be part of that culture. And that TV programs have the power to change perceptions and to create real behaviour change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe. Again, another truly fascinating talk, and it's interesting, isn't it, that I've never heard of the Nicki Minaj challenge. But other than that, so there's this idea then, isn't it, that you've got technology. We've come a long way in 100 years. We've come a long way from spinning metal discs through to 2 TV channels, 3 TV channels, colour TV, high definition TV. Now we've got it on our phones. Now it's about whether or not AI is going to make the content for us, or whether we're going to make the content that we see then on those platforms. And actually the impact that all of these shared experiences, if we do continue to have shared experiences through the medium of TV, can have on society. So 3 absolutely fascinating talks. So please give us a round of applause for the speakers. We're going to take a short comfort break now, just so that we can address the set a little bit, stretch our legs. But we're going to come back in 10 minutes' time, so if you please join us. If you're watching at home, come back in 10 minutes' time. If you're here in the studio, just don't go anywhere. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Hello, right, welcome back. Thank you if you stuck around, I really hope you did. What a fascinating conversation, or fascinating three speakers we had just now, discussing what the future of TV, what even is TV. So actually, I'm really pleased to welcome back my guests, Luke, Zoe and Laura. Thank you for sharing your perspectives with me just now, and thank you for coming back now for a panel discussion. I'd really like to start with that question that I teased just then. What is TV these days? You know, what does TV mean in this day and age? Luke, go on then.
I think to a lot of audiences at the moment, TV has expanded beyond just the set in the corner of the room to encompass multiple forms of entertainment. And all the different platforms that you find TV on. I think that the idea that we had of TV that was the linchpin of the sort of household when we were growing up, and this, the sort of replacement for the fireplace where stories would be told, has sort of had a big bang into a lot of really exciting different directions. And I think because we have devices in our pockets, because we have devices, laptops, etc., iPads, tablets, what video entertainment or video, or I hate the word content, but fair enough, content, you know what I'm saying? It's found in a lot of different places, and so TV really is maybe a passé term.
Well, I can't stand that word content, but I don't know what else we're supposed to call it.
The thing about that is, I was like, I hate the word content. I always have. I felt like that was the watershed for things becoming about just blah.
Yeah.
And then all the young YouTubers adopted the term and started using it, and all the young people call it their content. And so I'm afraid the war was lost there.
Do the BBC or the commercial platforms, channels, do the channels call it content?
I think no, not so much. I think more like programs or programming. I think is probably what the broadcasters more like to call it. And I agree with Luke, is that TV is not just on a TV set anymore, and we like to watch TV on any device we can. People would, if they can, they prefer to watch it on the big screen in the living room, just because it's the bigger screen and it's probably high definition and the best quality. But if they can't do that, they like to be able to watch it on a phone or a tablet, whatever's convenient.
And that's the thing, isn't it? So if we think of, I don't know if I think of TikTok as TV, but I know my son doesn't watch anything but TikTok. So that's TV for him. How does someone like the BBC deal with that?
So this feels a bit like a state of mind thing. I think TV is a state of mind. It's about getting together to watch something or watching something on your. It's about. I mean, I keep going on about human connection, but it's about a human talking to more humans, and I'm fascinated with how YouTube has moved onto the big screen in the sitting room in a way which, it never used to be. So people used to watch YouTube in the bedrooms and on the laptops and maybe on the phones. But now it's really taking its place, at the heart. We can see the, absolute dominance of that platform. But, we're really proud of things like Traitors, which is, I think we were looking at the Christmas viewing figures, 14.9 million. I mean, absolutely astonishing. We were incredibly fortunate, or, we've had good fortune or made good fortune in getting into that and doing it in the way that we have. And I think having those incredible moments where people come together, talk about it, whole families sit in the same sitting room and collaborate around, who they think is going to win, who's going to be kicked out, etc. And I think that kind of shared experience, that's at the heart of what TV feels like to me. And that's a very kind of emotional concept rather than a sort of technical or a societal one. But, for me, that's the heart of what it is. And then, when you're looking at the kind of the TikToks and things, me running into my son's bedroom going, oh my God, have you seen this? Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. It's just that's just the kind of the up-to-date sort of version of that, isn't it? It's sharing stuff, sending stuff, having human connection around stuff that's, expressing an experience of the world, for me, is a very kind of philosophical way.
So that's a really interesting point then, that it is about this human connection and it is about shared experiences, and whether or not it's a 30-second TikTok or a reel that you're sharing with someone, or it's a program like Traitors that what was it, the last viewing figures were 12 million people sat down to watch that, or whether it is, you know, the sidemen of the world. You know, there is a shared experience there. So how in this, in that sort of landscape then, where, you know, we've got Gemini and other AI platforms, there are other AI platforms available, being embedded into TV, so it's almost like that shared experience is going to get taken away from us, or is it? Have I got a dystopian view of this?
I think if you were to start out now, I would not advise you to go for something that could be a shared experience for everybody. I think these are few and far between that can be provided by, you know, outlets like the BBC. I think independent program makers or content creators, you know, the advice I'd give them was to go niche, to find something in this incredible niche world we live in that they can own and then can grow to something that could be mainstream from that niche audience. You get one great audience, you activate them on sites like Patreon, and then you can build a sort of following.
But that niche and that you've still got that audience, that very specific that you'll share with it. That's a shared experience for that audience, I suppose. I guess.
Yeah, I think even if it's niche, it can still be shared. You share it with the other people that love the same thing that you love. And you talked about passions, and it's about sharing whatever you're passionate about. And people are very passionate about their favourite TV programme, whether it's a thing like The Traitors, or it might be something really small and niche. You know, it's snowboarding, whatever it is but you're very passionate about it, and you share it with the people that also are passionate about it. So shared viewing is important from an emotional point of view, I think, and from an advertising perspective, shared viewing really matters.
Well, so that was going to be one of my other questions then. There is, you know, how in this new landscape where we've moved, in the 90s we blew beyond 4 TV channels and we went into 50 TV sets with nothing on, to misquote the Bruce Springsteen song. But then that's exploded now into multiple platforms, multiple devices. To your talk, Luke, when you said it's going to be 50% creators and 50% audiences, who's going to pay for that? So right now, you know, we've got big platforms or big channels that can invest in that type of programming. As that landscape gets completely flattened out, and anyone can be a content creator, and anyone can be a distributor because we've all got the means of distribution, who's going to start paying for those things? Is this something that the advertising industry is?
Well, I guess advertising does pay for a lot of TV programmes. So Channel 4 is fully funded by advertising. They don't make any programmes themselves, so they don't sell any programmes. ITV is slightly different because they make programmes which they sell, some to the BBC or other people, and obviously they make money through advertising. And then you've got someone like Netflix, which is most of their money comes from subscription, but they obviously started taking advertising in the last few years, so some money is now coming from advertising. But I think advertising is a way forward, because if it's good quality content, people will be prepared to watch the ads in return for the free content. So it's a model that certainly works, and that's why people like Netflix were saying, oh, we were definitely never going to take ads, and they realised actually maybe we do need to. And so it's a good way of funding good quality content. But obviously, there's a limit to the advertising revenue. There isn't suddenly going to be loads more advertising revenue just because there's more content that needs, to be paid for. It's not going to grow in proportion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose and again, this might be my naivety, right? That I think if I'm paying multiple platforms across multiple, if I pay for no adverts on YouTube, I pay for Disney, I pay for Prime, I don't pay for Netflix. I nicked my sisters. Oh, probably shouldn't say that. But where my money's going is being spread thinly, and actually, again, back in the day when it was for the UK audiences, it was a license fee to the BBC, or it was advertising revenue from a commercial channel. They were the editors, right? They were the ones that they commissioned. Right now, if anyone can be a commissioner, because they're going to start it, are we going to see a dip in the quality, do you think?
Well, I mean, if you look at the quality of what you see made by creators. It's brilliant. I mean, it is absolutely brilliant, and I wouldn't want to do it down. And it rises, if people enjoy it and like it. So, essentially, it's making its own way. I think there's a massive upending in the whole financial model of the way everything is done. That sounds quite dramatic, but I think there is, because if you look at things like AI, sorry, I'm a bit obsessed with it, but if we're going to be creating more by AI, we've already talked in the coffee break about how AI has democratized the program making process. So things that you could do, and it started to happen with virtual studios and things, but things that used to take absolutely forever and cost a fortune to do, you can do incredibly quickly. One of my favourite things to do is to sort of sit and watch a film and go, that would be AI, so all the things that, took ages and Mission Impossible, and, poor old Tom Cruise had to be dangled from a building. So, that's going to change things. The way that the AI companies are taking data and content and training on it is a really hot potato at the moment, because lots of creative organisations say we should be compensated for that, and, so far, that's not happened, but there's a huge, very hot debate over that. There's regulation pending. There was a big House of Lords committee on copyright a couple of weeks ago, which was really, really interesting on that, and how we deal with that. So I think there's an enormous kind of shift in how things are funded and how things are paid for and how things reach us coming, or if it's not started to be here already. It's going to be very, very dramatic, in my view, and I think we need to prepare ourselves and put ourselves in the best position possible to make sure that, we know how to react to that.
Well, Luke, so you run an independent production studio. Is the landscape? Are you finding the landscape difficult, or?
I think we're really lucky to have carved a niche of the type of programs we make, and we're also, touch wood, very lucky because. Over my career, I've managed to make a lot of great relationships with talent that we've been managed to capitalize on to be able to get where we're going. I think that if I was to start again today, maybe a different business model might be the one that we'd go for, just because of, the way that program funding is. The commissioning model, it has never been so difficult. No. And also, the commissioning model is motivated by, on one end, it's motivated by getting the most mainstream things. So, for instance, last week, the guys at Netflix announced they're going to have a brand new documentary about Take That and a brand new documentary about Gordon Ramsay. These are very, very... these are things stories we maybe have heard before, but done in a different way. They're going to do Lucy Letby as well. These are 3 announcements from last week. And so these are all things that everybody in this room will have heard of, right? And everybody will be able to go to. So we're not having so much opportunity to do sort of outlier stories funded by those big budgets. So anybody who wants to tell different stories with smaller talent, they have to go more on a sort of self-publishing model. And, the thing about the self-publishing model is you have to be really smart. In the last 10 years, we've seen 2 incredible stories, the story of Vice and the story of BuzzFeed, right? Yeah. These companies 10 years ago were the future. They were the be-all and end-all. They ran the internet. But they got in a situation where, a little more complicated than this, but to make it quite simple, they had a situation where all of a sudden advertisers were faced with this dilemma. Do I give money to Vice and BuzzFeed to go directly to their audiences, or do I give it to Meta and Google to target exactly who I want to target? And we know the answer to that. And so we live in a world where it's quite different. There's like a ceiling for entertainment brands if you're going to go that route and publish on these big platforms.
And there was a time, and I came off the platform a while ago. So, but Facebook were doing original content. They were commissioning.
Facebook Watch.
Yeah. Is that still a thing?
It's not, no. I think the thing is, when I was working at YouTube, and I had the conversation with Patrick, who used to run Facebook Watch over here the other day as well, and he was saying the same thing that I was facing, which is many of the meetings I'd have at Google, they'd start with the question, why are we doing this? Yeah. We've got an open platform. People will put their content on our thing. Why would we want to pay for it ourselves, put ourselves at risk of reviews, negative backlash of critics, not winning awards, political stance, not being an open platform which can put you at risk of certain fines in Europe. These are big things that those original content units within the big platforms were putting at risk. And so ultimately, I think really the main business model of being an open platform and ad funded won over in both of those cases.
But it used to be that, you know, for that outlier content, at least in the UK, you'd go to somewhere like Channel 4 then, right? That was within their original constitution, was around supporting those underrepresented groups or giving voice to that. Yeah. I don't know if they still do that.
No, it is still like that. So their remit is they have to produce programming for different groups. So, you know, the ITV have their remit, obviously BBC have got theirs, and Channel 4 have a different one, and it's about being risky, and it's about being different. So I think they very much try and produce programming for alternative and different
I once
audiences.
had a meeting with the head of diversity at Channel 4 when I worked for the Film Council, and I got told diversity was outside of the M25. That was his definition of diversity.
I think Channel 4 is a really interesting case because, just like you say, there's the remit that they've had and always have. Every fond TV memory from my youth was on Channel 4. But I think 15 years ago, you know, management came across from the BBC and they were very conscious of the ad dollar. And, you know, a lot of things like Bake Off, Saturday Kitchen, all these things were really positive for a certain audience who were very popular with advertisers, became the main thrust of the channel. And so I feel like there's been a lot of work to go back in the direction of the original remit, but I think they had a big old period of time where they were facing the fiscal realities of getting advertisers to spend money.
So back onto our topic of the future of TV then, right? So we've got something like TikTok, which I know, so your stats sort of said that it was sort of flatlining and plateauing, but I look towards my kids, my 15-year-old, and that's all I see him doing, right? Is there a space there that TikTok are going to get into original programming? Is there something, that idea that you can watch a TV show in short 90-second clips? Is that something that they've done? I'll admit, I'm a Gen X, I'm not on TikTok.
So microdramas are really huge, and you know, coming out of China, there's an enormous growth, isn't there, in that sort of thing. So, you know, doing something and really atomizing it, and it's like there's nothing new in the world, because that was what Charles Dickens did, you know, back in the day when he would sort of put out bits of his book in the paper and you'd read it. And I think, you know, the appetite for consuming content in different ways is really exciting, and we should all be excited about it, because you know, there are so many ways that you can do things and put things out there. I think for me, there's just one other thing that I kind of worry about, which is, and we had a brilliant question in the break about piracy and protecting our content, because as we put content out into the big wide world of the internet and social media, it used to be protected when we broadcast it, and you know, nobody could get in there unless they went to a transmitter and plugged in, which was pretty hard to do without frying yourself. But now we see our content spoofed and pirated all the time. So I think it's really important that we try to find measures, which there are many of out in the industry. There's something called C2PA, which is a big media provenance standard. There's watermarking. There's enormous numbers of companies really getting into this space and helping us protect the content and make sure that, you know, in the case of news in particular, which is an obsession of mine, that we allow people to find the trustworthy content they're looking to find, and to make sure it's from where they think it's from. Because in this big wide political world, which is kind of scary at the moment, there's an enormous amount of disinformation and misinformation out there, which is something I think we need to really sort of keep across. And also, you know, protecting the value of our content, because if somebody's spoofing you and undercutting you, then, you know, then the money goes out of the equation as well.
And I think that's interesting as well, because it was that idea when there were fewer broadcasters, fewer channels, fewer people producing content, there was an editorial control. And, you know, so I'm sort of hooked on the news, but I'm hooked on the news on YouTube. And I have to work really hard to make sure my algorithm stays relatively broad. So I have to sit through Fox News and I have to sit through GB News so that I try and get a balanced view of some description, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. I'm pretty sure it's being led a certain way. How are we going to be able to push back against that, or
you need to
are we?
Watch news on the BBC would be my recommendation, or any trusted news source. So if you're going to get news, you want it from a trusted source, and so trusted journalism is really important. And when it comes to news, You've got to go to places. Entertainment, you know, you want to be entertained. The trust element isn't there so much, but when it comes to news, you've got to get trusted journalism, I think.
You know, I had a really scary experience with some elder members of my family over recent years who will remain nameless, but they would pick up, you know, a phone with a YouTube video of some guy in his basement and go, oh, this is the news on YouTube. And I'd be like, yo, you know, what this person says is accurate. And I was like, no, this is an individual. This could be you. This could be me. This could be anyone. They're like, but this is YouTube. And they didn't really see the difference between YouTube, BBC, etc. They really grasped the idea of an open platform. And I think there are a lot of people that now, you know, need to see an anchor or a logo of the BBC to be able to, you know, really know that they're getting news from a reputable source. And I feel like there's a lot of people that have grown up in a climate where news comes from many different places.
But like, you see it though with the rise of podcasts, right? You know, podcast is this huge medium that's now moving across. Half of all podcasts now have a YouTube channel, so it's a massively growing thing. But there is no restrictions on what you say. You don't, you know, I'm not the world's greatest interviewer, but even I think I'm better than Stephen Bartlett, and I will push back against certain things if you were to say something offensive to me.
But podcasts are so clever, aren't they? Because, you know, you look at, and I'm not saying I'm a fan, but, you know, you look at somebody like Candace Owens, and what she has done so brilliantly is to get her content everywhere. So you get a small clip of a big interview and then another clip going somewhere else, and she's got all of the platforms and she's pushing it, so it will appear in your feed at some point. So there's lessons we can learn from the people who are doing this sort of the native podcasters, the native social media broadcasters and people who are doing this, you know, really, really well. But also, I saw something which shocked me the other day. Not much shocks me, but I saw Prince Harry was in court. Did anybody see Prince Harry in court? Yep. Did you see the Dan Wootton Prince Harry clip? So I was watching this thinking, well, that's very strange. Prince Harry has been filmed in court, and we know that that's unlikely to happen. It was AI. So they'd got Prince Harry's interview. They got Prince Harry's words, and they'd put them into a Prince Harry avatar. And it was quite realistic until you suddenly went, oh my God, this can't be him, it's AI. And it was. And I think, you know, there's an AI channel, a news channel, which actually deliberately says, you know, if we can't get to the story, we'll give you an AI version of what it might have looked like. To me, that's not news. And I'm going to go back to my theme and say that, you know, we need to keep human observability in journalism in the news, and we need to keep reality. We need to keep authenticity, because I don't want to see an AI version of a shipwreck which might have looked like that ship going down. If I see it at all, I want to see what actually happened. And we're really in danger of losing touch with, you know, of our shared reality. And I think that would be, you know, an awful thing to happen.
And that's, I think you're right, and that trust is so important in this day and age, and I think going forward it will become even more so. And that's why if you want trusted content, you need to go to the TV companies, because those are the people they have paid professionals to make this content, and every single piece of content on every single TV channel has been watched by a human person to make sure it's safe to go out, maybe with a 9 p.m. restriction if it's a bit adult. It's safe to go out, and a human person has watched it, every single piece of content, and said, yes, that's okay to go out, and it's not going to cause offence either physically or emotionally or in any way, and it's true and honest and decent, and I think that's key.
That sort of brings us that full circle to what is TV then, isn't it? Because I suppose if you've got TikTok and that's the screen-based medium that you're watching.
Well, that's video, but it's not TV. So there's video, but all TV is video, but not all video is TV. So TikTok is video and watched by lots of people and enjoyed, but it's not TV, because TV has a kind of quality stamp to it. It's been made by professionals, and it's been deemed to be safe for broadcast and follows the Ofcom and the BCAP codes, which is really important for viewers and in turn for advertisers.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on that, because that was a great definition, and it's wonderful that we do it. You gave that definition here in a TV studio at a university where we are teaching the next generation of programme makers to stick to that editorial quality control. I want to thank Luke, Zoe, Laura, thank you so much for coming along, sharing your thoughts and perspectives and opinions. Thank you everybody you guys for sticking around, and hopefully people who were watching on YouTube. Thanks very much.
Thank you.